Welcome everyone to the Island Life podcast, where we journey onto the island of discovery to relive some of the best and worst moments of Survivor. My name is Will, an experienced Survivor fan, 48 seasons deep, and I will be your guide. And joining us on this adventure is not Ange this time, but we do welcome back our Survivor newbie, the brand new Survivor fan who just finished his third season of the show. I give you Survivor F.
Just another week I was shipwrecked, but good to be back again. Nice to see you, Will.
I'm very happy that you're back for this week because you just experienced, believe it or not, legendary Survivor moment, or at least legendary Survivor episode / moment, because this was Jacket Gate. We're gonna immediately go into our first episode because we gotta break this down. So episode 5 was titled Jackets and Eggs. Very appropriate. That's basically the two things that happened. And how did you feel that, for all intents and purposes, the strategy of this tribal council was, I want a jacket?
It it's very pragmatic in a way, but it not the way that you would expect a vote to be handled, just centering around having an item or trying to negotiate around an item, that being a jacket. So very odd episode, but when you had mentioned to me that this was a legendary episode, and thinking about how the sequence of events went, I believe it. It's one where we had that recurring theme of this person has a jacket. I want that jacket. Let's try to negotiate and see if we can keep them on with the jacket at stake. So it became a running topic of discussion that we kept hearing about, and lo and behold, fitting name for the title of the episode. That's for sure.
Which part was the craziest for you? So as a reminder, we through half the a full 25 minutes or so, like from the end of the challenge to the end of tribal, we have suddenly Angelina telling Natalie, so we want to get out Lyrsa, but I want her jacket. Can you, Natalie, get that jacket for me? So we have that. Later, we have Natalie blackmailing, or I don't know if that's the right word, threatening, basically, Nick, give me your
Pretty much.
jacket or else we might vote you out. So there's
Oh,
that.
and he was immediately just not a fan of it. Immediately shut that down.
And then at actual tribal, there is like Jeff even talks about the jacket, and Natalie tries to say, so it wasn't threatening, and this Jeff's like, well, what would you call it? And then lastly, of course, there is Natalie finally getting voted out, which we'll get to, but Angelina going up to hug her, but then, Natalie, could I get your jacket? Natalie, her torch gets stuffed. Natalie. So yeah, which of those was the craziest for you?
Yeah, definitely the last one, that was the most memorable, and, it's one where I had to ask you while we were going through it, is Angelina just being coy here? Like, is she just, like, playing with Natalie, or, like, is she seriously asking for her jacket? And I was like, if she was part of the reason that Natalie got eliminated, that's a pretty cold way to send someone off, request their jacket. But, as we dive into the tribal, we recap that, it turns into a funny sequence of events. That's all I'll say.
Oh yeah, and I mean, she was 100% serious. I think this is a special case. We go out of order for this because we have to. It's the main thing of the episode, so we gotta talk about it. So
All
all you
right.
need to know is that because this smaller group, the Purple Tribe, is going to Tribal Council, there are 3 Goliaths on the tribe in Angelina, Mike, and Natalie, and then 2 original David tribe members, Nick and Lyrsa. It seems clear that it's going to be either Nick or Lyrsa. There's no real reason for the Goliaths to turn on each other, except of course that Natalie continues to further dig herself deeper, get on everyone's nerves, and then they're actually not going to turn on each other. It's just that, like we said, Angelina is telling Natalie, and I think we should get Lyrsa. And I want her jacket because it's cold. There's been 2 cyclones. It's raining all the time. Angelina wants a jacket, and I guess that part I can understand the desire to have that. And so by the time we get to tribal council, seemingly Natalie has gotten on so many people's nerves that the Goliaths are willing to eat each other. So actually, all 4 of the other people are on the same page of voting out Natalie. However, Angelina intentionally votes for Lyrsa instead, knowing that it's fine, like Natalie will still get voted out, all with the intention of trying to not seem like she betrayed Natalie so that she could stand up at the end, look shocked, little tears in her eye, go hug Natalie, and then ask her, "Could I get your jacket?" as she's walking to Jeff to get her torch stuffed.
To no avail. Like it came across as a parody in that you couldn't believe that that was what they were basing the votes on, rather than like the actual, like how people are actually playing, more like an object in the game that you can get. And it's just interesting thinking about, hey, I really like this person's jacket. I'm just gonna vote them out just because that's a nice jacket. I want to wear that. Angelina, just like at some point in the episode, if I recall, she had mentioned that she was cold blooded. She gets cold easily, so that was
She
her
says she
motivation
said
for.
she runs cold, according to her.
Honestly, she was pretty cold blooded too, but that was the reason for her trying to. That was her motivation for trying to get the jacket. So functionality of keeping yourself warm. And, it goes back to like what we've been seeing over the course of the season so far. They've been dealing with some really brutal weather here, right? Like cold weather, droughts, a lot of like windy, essentially like hurricane kind of like weather. And it got to a point where, Jeff had to like reconsider how he was like housing some of these survivors. I think that obviously affected like how the voting went here. If we had sunny days, like in a lot of the other seasons, this wouldn't even be a talking point. But the weather has really come into effect this season so far. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
It's some of the most iconic, just weather weathers on Survivor seasons, or at least like the atmosphere, the environment. Because nowadays, and this is partly because they go to the same place over and over again, we see the same climate over and over again. It's not like the elements are very seldom a part of the story anymore.
Uh-huh.
And even by like the first 40 seasons of Survivor standard, this is extreme. This is not so like to have to be taken off the island by production is rare. And twice two cyclones, and there could be more. Who knows? If it's rainy season, then there could be lots of cyclones. And it creates. But I like that they also focused on both aspects of the weather. So first, of course, it's you're freezing, you're wet, you can't do anything. You just have to huddle together in the shelter. And then after they come back, it's like, oh yeah, like we actually now have to spend time building a shelter again because usually you only got to build it once.
Right.
So I appreciated them at least mentioning that because yeah, of course you got like their shelters destroyed.
Yeah, no,
Um, yeah,
in a sense, that's what I really appreciate about the season so far. I'm still warming up to some of the contestants, so we are getting there, but it's as brutal as it is. This is what I think of when you say Survivor, right? Like not only surviving these challenges, surviving by having a strong social game, but truly surviving the elements, having the willpower to keep pushing on another day. That's what it means to be a survivor, to me at least.
but also be able to keep your head in the face of this adversity too, because Angelina. And to be clear, she ultimately votes out Natalie kind of as a strategy. Like she chooses along with Mike to just we hate Natalie so much we can't go on working with her, so let's just get her out now. And then as a bonus, she also has a jacket. So I know I was planning to take Lyrisa's, but I could try to ask for Natalie's instead. Whereas whereas deciding between Lyrisa and Nick, that kind of seemed like it's like I want Lyrsa's jacket. Now Nick, I mean he has his suit jacket. I don't know if that's
I
any better or worse, but
I I was gonna say, I was, because the theme of the episode was jackets, I was gonna ask, if you were to take anyone's jacket, of the tribe that we've seen, the Jabani tribe, whose jacket would you go for if you had the option?
you know, I kind of am siding with Angelina. Lyrisa's looked like a good rain jacket. Like, because I think like Nick's, I think it's heavy and so it's gonna stay soaked probably the whole day. Lyrisa's it kind of looked like it was
It's
more
more
of like a
functional.
windbreaker type. Like
Yeah.
it's water resistant slash waterproof.
Yeah, no, realistically the same. I would choose Lyricist, but, like, in actuality, like, if I was actually in the game, I think one of the things in my mind would be I kinda wanna look a little stylish, and for that reason, I might opt to choose Nick's jacket and just be like, "Okay, well, even if this isn't necessarily the best jacket for these type of weather conditions, at least I look really cool in this environment."
I mean, Natalie's was also very colorful and everything. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just crazy that like that should have been a like throwaway haha moment, but Angelina and I mean she made her bed. She really pushed this to be a theme of the vote because even before we talked about even before tribal. So she wants Lyra's jacket. She then asks her teammate Natalie to get the jacket for her. She doesn't elaborate how to do this. She's just like, "Go go get it," basically. So another like, does she mean go steal it? Like, what does she mean? And she in confessional is like, "Yeah, Natalie's the perfect person because that's believable. People hate her, so it doesn't
It's all
because who
about,
who do I
like,
care if they hate her
just
more?"
lie, cheat, steal, whatever you gotta do, just, make it happen.
Now, rules police here. You can't steal people's stuff. So Natalie would have had to like coerce or persuade Lyrsa to give up the jacket. And I don't know if Angelina knew that this is how Natalie was gonna do it, but Natalie chooses to approach Nick as part and that conversation started with just Nick kind of like, "Oh, yeah, so it's gonna be Lyrsa, right?" He's probably just saying that, try to get information, figure out what to do. But Natalie turns that into like, "Yeah, but, it'd be good if, you had something to offer," and then eventually he's like, "Yeah, well" actually, she says, "We want Lyris's jacket," and Nick's like, "What?" Like, "I'm not gonna steal someone's stuff." And I was like, "Well, what about your jacket?" He's like, "My jacket?" Like, "No, I'm not giving you my jacket." He's like, "Well, if it's a jacket versus $1,000,000, it's like, come on." And Nick is just perplexed that anyone would
No,
say that.
I mean, that was a very aggressive tone that she came with, and huge respect to Nick there. He stood his ground and stood by his principles there. And I think, morally, he has the high ground there. It's just it's not even just about, like, the jacket, it's like, you're just that's just being disrespectful towards someone that I'm valuing this object rather than, even trying to take you seriously, and if I need that object to keep myself in this game or to coerce you to get your vote or to keep your name out of the vote, then, that's not a great way to play the game. You're not gonna have a lot of friends playing like that.
And the crazy thing is, they weren't like Nick, even if he was lying, Nick was saying, "I'm on your side, like, I'm gonna vote for Lyrsa," and they're not voting for Nick. So, like, it's one thing if they went to Lyrsa and said, "It looks like it's gonna be you, but maybe if you offered us something, we can make it Nick instead." But
I
it's
mean,
not. It's not gonna be Nick, and they're still like blackmailing him basically.
Is all I gotta say is that really surprising from what we've seen from Natalie. Like, she has been her own biggest enemy, and without even realizing it. Like, even again, going back to tribal for a second, that during the middle of the tribal, before they had to vote, having a dialogue with everyone, we got into some awkward conversations, and Jeff had to chime in. Natalie would make a statement and either cut Jeff off, or Jeff felt like he interjected too early. And then he had a couple moments where he had to back off and be like, "Okay, no, Natalie, you finish." Up until, it happened enough to a point where he noticed that there was a recurring pattern with Natalie, which he spoke to and said, "Natalie, it seems to me that you always like having the last word on things, right?" And me as a viewer, I wasn't thinking of it, but he kind of explained in a way that, like, yeah, a personality trait that she's showing that obviously is turning into a pet peeve for people around her, and she is not making herself a friendly person, or someone that you want to enjoy spending time with, regardless of if they're in your group or they're not.
And by the way, she responds that no, because Jeff kind of phrases like, "Is it fair to say that you have to have the last word?" She's like, "No, that's not the case. Not always." So she still had the last word.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. See, normally I would guess that like maybe even Jeff was getting annoyed, but actually I think he's just like happy for the drama. So,
Yeah, no,
but
his
he was
his
smiling.
response came more across as he actually felt like he was interjecting and was just trying to gauge some of, Natalie's thoughts, and rather than try to get into a debate with her entire group, that he just wanted to give her a stage to be able to, like, voice her opinion on things. But,
Now look, I never thought
clear
I'd be doing this, but coming to bat for Natalie in her defense, she didn't want the jacket. She was only doing that because her ally asked her to.
Yep.
And now, of course, she interpreted that request in a kind of a wild way, and her strategy was bizarre. Even at Tribal, Lyrsa, who is also understandably feeling quite attacked because it comes out, she's told by Nick privately, and then it comes out publicly at Tribal that originally the plan was to basically steal without stealing her jacket, like trick her or
Right.
something to get her jacket, or maybe like make her leave her jacket back at Tribal so that if she gets voted out, her jacket's there, like something like that. So like that's crazy. And then Lyris is trying. She says something to the effect of, "But like we're people. Like you can't just treat us as objects." And Natalie, bizarre. I mean, maybe I should be surprised anymore. She says, "I don't see people. I don't see a person. I see a person with a jacket," which
Yeah,
is
no,
like, but
Natalie was like, I've seen her cold before, but, like, this was just cold-blooded right there. Those responses, that is exactly what I think of when I think of a CEO. Just cutthroat, direct,
yeah.
take what they want, but I digress.
Speaking
Yeah,
of
no, it was,
cold-blooded, right? But Angelina, you mentioned it. She herself decides after deciding that, we can get out, Natalie. That's fine. She's intentionally trying to manipulate her feelings so that Natalie will give her jacket after being voted out.
and
Also
you
crazy.
might have noticed that earlier, the point that you made that it wasn't originally Natalie's plan, it was something that she was trying to do more so for, Angelina. She actually she vouched for her, and at the moment, you're thinking that, "Oh, okay, well, she's coming to bat for her." And then, based on how the vote goes, based on how it comes across as Angelina is more, this is just more manipulation at play rather than a genuine desire to actually support this person. Yeah, a lot of it comes off as, like, two-faced, so it's, we get to see some personalities on display within this tribe.
Oh yeah, yeah. It helps when the same group of people go to tribal in both of the episodes we watch because we see a lot of them. But all these people are loud. Larissa actually didn't really pop up in the last two episodes, so it was good seeing her here.
I feel bad for Lyrsa. Like there's just that common theme with her where people just underestimate her, and it's like most of the scenes that we have with her, it's just someone might be looking down on her, and this, like, quite literally that, like, oh, I value your jacket over you as a person. So, just to have her come away with a win, it was nice to see as a change of pace.
Yeah, no, this must have felt good because this must have felt like out of nowhere, someone like personally attacking you for no explained reason. And or the explained reason of your jacket, which is crazy. So
Yeah.
she must have felt amazing. Now, the theme of this we're gonna talk about next is Goliaths turning on their own. So we need to bring it back to the previous episode because that this episode started with the recap of the last episode, and it's the fallout from Alec turning on Natalia and siding with the Davids on our tribe. When you were catching up, uh, and then saw the recap and then saw this episode, how do you feel about Alec's decision to basically put him and Kara in a minority on their own tribe rather than just vote out one of the Davids and then it's them to Kara, Natalia, and Alec in control on their tribe?
That's a good question. It's all a matter of perspective. I know for us, we're only like 5, 6 episodes deep at this point, and for them, it's what, like, just under like 16, 17 days on the island. But, just looking at as a viewer, just watching on TV, it doesn't look like, based on how much time has passed, that I am just locked in on the tribe that I have. I think for me, if I've made it past the first few episodes, I'm more just thinking about what things look like post-merge and how groups might shift and dynamics might shift at that point. So, I think if there is a strategic play to be had, I'm not personally someone who is uber invested in the fact that, oh, I originated in this group. It's not a group I myself selected. It was just a group that I was assigned to. I feel like, you got to play a little bit more pragmatically, where, you got to work with other people you got to cross those tribal lines and work with other people if you want to stay in for the long run. I think if you stay tied to your tribe early on, you give yourself reasons for people to doubt you, especially if they're part on the other side. So, um, for me, is it surprising, based on maybe how traditionally people would play Survivor? Probably, but I have no issue with Nick essentially crossing tribal lines and voting against his majority. Because for me, that majority, with how, like, because the game to me still is kind of in the early phase, that that tribe is not fully solidified yet. So I don't see it as rock solid.
The tricky part is that you need to make your decisions based on your path to get to the end and win, hopefully.
Right.
So
Exactly.
Alec, all so Alec, it's hard to say because so in the short term, he has put Kara and himself in danger because now there's 3 Davids to just them 2. But on the other hand, you could argue he's put himself in the majority because he sided with those
Yes.
Davids. So actually, he's fine in the short term. Now, in the long term, this looks better if he's going to stick with that group. It might be difficult to come back if he wants to play with John and Dan and Angelina, like that group. If he wants to do that again, he'll have to explain why he got out Natalia. He might not be trusted now that he's betrayed them once. So I do see that that is a risk. So hopefully, I think it's okay if you really your plan A is to stick with these new people that you're with, for the foreseeable future. I would like it better if like how Nick and Christian, let's say, like the Mason Dixon
Uh,
alliance, they're not on the same tribe right now, but they really got close. So I feel like if Nick or Christian caused waves to happen on their current tribes, as long as they made it to the merge, then then at least they know they can join forces again. And there'd be that connection.
yeah.
Alec, the only story we were shown in the edit was that he was close to Natalia. and that clearly did not last. So that that is my worry because he puts himself with the Davids, but what if the Davids are like, we don't care about him. We're happy to have his vote. So I
I
think
would
that's a
say
risk.
that, definitely the point where it can backfire is if you built a relationship where, in hindsight, it could have helped you out, where you did not need to rush a vote. Yeah, in that case, then you're not necessarily looking at the long game. You're kind of just playing with emotions and making moves in the short term that you feel could be beneficial. Uh, if if he had a good stable relationship with Natalia and he felt that like she could have stuck with him in the long term, I'm sure he probably would not have voted her out, but they might have had a sequence where he just didn't feel like he could fully trust her, so that made
Oh,
him.
she did no favors for herself. I mean, she had almost as bad of a crash out as Jeremy did in terms of
Yeah, well,
paranoia.
there you go. And I will say to your point about like once you go back to the original tribes, I think the way I see this work out, obviously I could be wrong here, is that, take someone in Alex's situation. He votes across tribal lines, essentially puts himself in the minority, but in a sense could be in the majority because he gains trust with the other tribe. Once they go back, maybe post merge, and it maybe then becomes back to a David versus Goliath kind of thing with like the original tribes. I would come away thinking that whatever heat he would get, he would still be shielded by the fact that there literally are other Davids that the Goliaths would target ahead of him. I don't think he would be the top priority where that conversation might come up that like, oh, you voted that person out. If you've thought it through, you could probably come up with a good defense like over a couple of days that you could try to pre-plan. But in my point of view, I think if you're wanting to play the long game, you can set it up in a way that you build that sort of trust across tribal lines with the other tribe. Yet at the same time, you don't necessarily turn it to the priority vote once you go back post merge. So I think that essentially could set you up well if you have a very good social game to go with it.
Yeah, it felt very different than this episode's vote because on the face of it, the same thing happens. Two Goliaths decide to turn on their own to target Natalie, but it felt different. A, because it's Natalie, but B, because Mike and Angelina are on the same page, whereas Alec was blindsiding Natalia and Angelina.
Right.
Uh, oh, not Angelina, sorry, Cara. So, like, it didn't feel like it felt like he went rogue versus, like, the Goliaths making a strategy. But you know what? I mean, Angelina and Mike will have to explain themselves. Granted, it's a pretty simple explanation. We hate her. We just couldn't go another day with her. But, uh but yeah,
Yeah, I
any
mean,
issue any issues with Mike and Angelina doing kind of the same thing?
I, yeah, no, I mean, I got to think about that. I think that like the point you brought up about him like going back to Alec for a second, him not only blindsiding Angelina or excuse me Natalia, but blindsiding Kara as well. That is where it becomes an issue because that comes across as he's underestimating his own tribe essentially, and that could be something where you can set it up for failure. Where if for whatever reason Kara gets the upper hand, she can turn it back on him and he might be the priority out for her. But going back to Mike and Angelina, I don't know. I think at least based on what we're told, it looks like outside of Natalie, the rest of the tribe does somewhat get along. I would like to think that there is solidarity with what they're trying to do, but I think yeah, Natalie in a sense is an outlier in the sense that she is not doing herself any favors. She is just making herself unbearable for others to be around, even when we've had situations where people have reached out to her with an olive branch. Um, she lives in a world of alternative facts, like what she sees and I see. Have a dialogue with her and tell her 2 plus 2 equals 4. She would spend likely the whole day arguing with me. 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4. 2 plus 2 equals 3. And you should know better. So like that's the type of person that we're talking about in that you came here to play a game, and an important part of the game is that social aspect. If you're if you're someone who isn't able to help, physically your tribe, that's going to make you stick out. They're going to consider you weak, and they might vote you out based on that. You can compensate for having a strong social game, for being cunning, for being smart, for just knowing how to talk to people. Natalie just does not check off any of those. I'm sure she's intelligent, don't get me wrong, but in terms of just how you play the game of Survivor, she is making other people really target her because she's ultimately not providing anything to her tribe. Something that we didn't touch up on that also is covered by the episode title, where it also mentioned eggs. Their tribe actually got eggs as one of the rewards from the earlier challenge in the episode. She was having a back and forth with Lyrsa about how to boil the eggs, what to do with that. Lyrsa had mentioned that, like, oh, I have experience with this. So, like, she should feel like, I feel like she should trust what I'm saying. But Natalie wanted to enforce her point and make sure that her opinion was stated. And that resulted in them getting into a little bit of a debate. So, you know, there's personalities that come out, and Natalie's personality is not one that jives well with anyone, even if they are genuinely trying to work with her. So I definitely don't place any blame on people who are in her tribe who are trying to vote her out, just because she's not really helping anyone's game, if we're being really honest.
For what's worth, the main debate was if I boil eggs, how long can they just be left out? And Natalie wants them to be left out like for a day.
Oh,
Like basically have boil them all now, eat half of them now and eat the other half tomorrow. And Laris is like, but no, like they'll go bad. What are you talking about? And since I'm not a foodie, I mean I technically did not know the answer to this. Uh According to the FDA, if you hard boil eggs, they don't want you to leave them out for more than 2 hours before going back in the fridge. So it seems
yeah,
like
I mean,
Natalie's plan would have been disastrous. Her whole tribe gets sick. It was a disaster.
I feel like even that would make sense if you just take a second to think about it. But like outside of that, I've never had experience eating an egg that, like, if you're preparing an egg in any way, shape, or form, you're generally eating it pretty quickly. So I have no way of testing otherwise. But I would, I would like to think what Lyrsa is saying is true, and that's not something I'd want to play around with, especially if I have food lying around.
Yeah,
But
it's
I mean,
just
I digress. All this to say that, like, again, Natalie's not doing herself any favors. She's just This ended up being quite a predictable vote for me, in that, you know, if there's no immediate target, if there's no other point of concern, there's no reason it shouldn't be Natalie.
well, the reason should have been let's keep the numbers so that best case scenario when we merge, if there's more Goliaths than Davids, we can all vote together and just pick them off one by one. But unfortunately, Natalie is just so polarizing that even they would rather give that up because by doing this, the numbers become even. Now there's the same amount of the Goliaths and Davids across the like all the tribes.
I mean,
And you know
I
what?
totally get it.
Ultimately,
I
it's just that's Natalie. It's she it was worth sacrificing the numbers, I think, for Natalie.
like, just think about it for a second. Like, you have someone who essentially is part of your tribe, gives you majority. What does it matter though if they are affecting your mental game? If they're just mentally draining to be around, or if they're making you really lose your cool, if you're someone who's generally just calm and collected, but like you're getting so annoyed by them that you're just kind of losing your cool around them, that impacts your game. That impairs how you play the game. So, you know, I definitely see a strong reason to do that. It did not have to be that way, but Natalie's lack of social awareness with how she's progressed through the game has been her own undoing.
Yeah, the only other thing I could think of is maybe you want to keep Natalie so that you sit next to her at the very end, predicting that no one's gonna vote for her. But I think the issue is like that would involve aligning with her potentially. And I mean, Jeremy in part went home because of his attempts to help Natalie. Like, I think you're gonna put yourself in danger for the rest of the season by trying to like manipulate events so that she doesn't get voted out.
It's
So in
funny
the
you
end,
mentioned, sit next to Natalie. I wonder if we'll hear anything about that later on.
uh, uh, good tease. So with that, I mean, that's basically that was the whole episode was the Jacket Gate. Uh, it was pretty iconic, and I just I just can't keep thinking about Angelina asking for that jacket once, twice, 3 times after her torch gets snuffed. And one more rules police here. When you get voted out, you can't give things. Like it's too late. Because that would be like if you had an idol and you got voted out, but like, wait, before I get voted out, here's my idol, and you like pass it to your teammate. Like you can't do that. So I don't think she could have given her jacket to after she got voted out. It would have to have been before she got voted
Yeah, there's no way that she, even if she could, that she did not even bother looking at Angelina
out. Oh
the
yeah,
whole
no.
time. So yeah, interesting, straightforward episode, pretty good one. Definitely makes for a memorable episode with the way that it ended. All in all, an enjoyable episode for me. I liked it.
Which brings us to episode 6, which is titled "Aren't Brochachos Just Adorable?"
That
And
they are. That they are.
they are actually. And this is in reference, of course, on the Green Tribe, which is doing quite well for themselves. We have the two big guys, John and Dan, and they actually have built a rapport with Christian of all people. And this has been going on for like 3 episodes now. And at this point, I don't know if they have a strategic alliance, but they have a friend alliance for sure. The 3 of them are hanging out, they're broing out, and it's it is cute. I mean, obviously, not everyone's happy with it. Uh, Gabby especially is affected by this, and we actually see, um, unfortunately, and I know was hoping that we've seen the last of Gabby having, um, kind of a emotional episode, but it does come
Yeah.
back as she's at first it starts out fine because she's noticing like, hey, Christian is very chummy with these 2 guys. So just doing the math, the Goliaths have the numbers here, so they're probably not gonna vote for each other, and they like Christian, so therefore it might be me. Let me try to go do something about it, which is good. You don't just sit around and wait for tribal, like try to do something in advance. So she goes to talk to Allison, but while talking to Allison, eventually she just can't help herself. Uh, as one of our friends would say, the Survivor Waterworks start as she feels alone, and in one breath she says like she trusts Christian, but in the other like but no one's talking strategy with me. She specifically calls out Dan, who never talks strategy with her. Now you have to understand he's not aligned. Like you are right, you're not paranoid in this case. You are correct. He's not aligned, so no, he's not going to talk strategy with you. And even if he did, it would be like fake, like he'd be lying to you. But I mean, I understand. Like if no one's talking to you and you're starving and you're out in cyclones and you're one person you feel really close with Christian is hanging out with these 2 big guys, that is a that is a big weight on your back to deal with.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And as Ange had put it earlier in the season, where she said, as Gabby caught feelings for Christian, this might have even been a situation where it was looking like Christian might have caught feelings for the Brochachos, I should say. Uh, yeah, no, it looked like, at least for Gabby, I think they're just to add insult to injury, someone she was closer to feels like they're slipping away, and it's just a feeling of helplessness as you're trying to navigate through this new environment. And certainly the weather's not helping, but putting it all together, this compared to our previous breakdown of Gabby that we saw, this one came across as a lot more like, understandable, natural, just kind of a human emotion that you feel like when things just are not happening in ways that you would expect. So I would give her the pass. I think it's not unreasonable to expect someone to act that way. And if you're feeling like you're at the bottom and you're trying to win it all, you start to get, there's a sense of desperation that comes crawling, and you got to figure out how to make things work when they aren't. So we'll see how she adapts her game or what she does. But overall, this was an interesting episode because not only did we see Gabby start to break down a little bit in one of the other tribes, the one with Elizabeth, I'm blanking on the name of that tribe. We
It's
got to see
Vuku.
some of that's right, Vuku. Yeah, we got to see some of their frustrations come out too. She was talking about not being able to walk prior to joining Survivor, having issues with her back. And, like the bamboos that they're sleeping on certainly weren't helping her. But as you could see with Elizabeth, her emotions were getting the better of her. Again, I get it. It's not it. We're talking about brutal weather here. We're talking about people having to mentally stay strong, physically play in these games, sometimes without any food, and it's hard. But for Elizabeth, she is putting herself in a position where others are looking at her attitudes and worrying maybe, is she going to be volatile? Is this someone where we have to keep an eye out for her? Because everything seems fine at one point, and then all of a sudden that she snaps, regardless of, how much she's justifying her actions. So I don't know what you were thinking when you were watching that sequence, but I thought, with her breaking down, this looks worse than the Gabby situation.
Uh oh yeah, this is actually Gabby. It seems to be working out for her because at the Allison, who she's talking to,
She
actually
heard her
tells
out.
us, yeah, like she's a very empathetic person. This makes her want to help Gabby. She's not promising anything necessarily, but she wants to make her feel better. And then in confessional, so not in front of Gabby, she is thinking like, "Hey, Dan already has an idol, and he is a strong guy. Clearly, they're broing out, so they're not really including me either. Not that I think they would vote for me, but it might be a concern. Maybe maybe I should think about getting out Dan at some point." And she even says, "It's not a matter of if, but when I blindside Dan," which is bold words. So this time, this actually feels like it's working out for Gabby. Now for Elizabeth, and in her defense, she fought off the discomfort for 16 days, but uh her issue is she, rather than like a emotional conversation, she just decides to take action. She doesn't consult anybody. Her plan is to take the bamboo, which is just like rods basically, it's the floor of their shelter, and she wants to cut all of them in half. So it would have one curved side and the other side would be flat. So ideally, it'd be a flat surface to lie down on in the shelter. I kind of suspect it's gonna be almost just as painful regardless, but it might be a little bit better. But because she didn't consult anybody, that involves taking apart their shelter first to do the cutting and put it back. And this cutting is loud. It wakes up Carl. And so Carl's issue is just you woke me up basically. But Davy's issue is the the day's halfway
Limited
done.
daytime.
Exactly. The day's halfway done when you started this. So you're gonna finish before nightfall, and then we're only gonna have half a shelter. So basically do it tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I mean, they each had their own argument. That was not one where it's like, this person's right, that person's wrong. It's just we saw a case of everyone's frustrations just boiling over, especially in Elizabeth's case. So, I feel for her. If you're having back issues, that's not it's obviously not a welcoming environment. Um, but, to her detriment, she needs to be communicating that out to her team. And, if you're trying to do something like that, start earlier in the day. Try to the game is not like a situation where you're the only person living in that environment. You're there with your tribe, and an important aspect of the game is that social aspect. So if you're not communicating with the group what you're thinking or what you're feeling, what might be hurting you, what might be on your mind, you might be shooting yourself in the foot because it can all boil over kind of like that and just create a cause of conflict that otherwise can be avoided. So, um, you brought up Dan, and going back to Dan for a second, we saw that Dan found another advantage this time around. He's got a good eye for those, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he actually explained it very well. So because we did that tribe swap. We're going from 2 tribes to 3 tribes, but the green tribe, which he is now on, that was a newly created tribe that went to a new beach. So he reasons that typically every beach has an idol on it, and this is a new beach, so there should be an idol here. And he also explains, I've already found one, so I know what to look for. I should look for something that has green string because my tribe color is green, and that's how I found the other one. Uh, and yeah, this works, but instead of it just being an idol right away, it's a instructions that in the upcoming challenge, there's going to be a hidden immunity idol that's like nestled in a structure of the challenge. And so your challenge is to covertly grab that during the challenge without drawing suspicion to yourself. And that's kind of new. I don't know if you've seen that before.
I
It comes
haven't.
up every now and then.
I think the closest thing that we saw was when Saul, in that food auction had that found that little slip in, like,
Yeah.
the bowl or something like that. That's the closest thing I can think of, but, I'm curious in terms of, like, how he came across that, like, do you think that if someone else just by pure happenstance happened to come across it and get that idol like that, like, his goal is to be able to get it in a way that he's not alerting anyone else, but if someone else just randomly comes across it in the challenge, is it fair for them to just take that?
Oh, it's fair for sure. Actually, that we've s- there's this is kind of interesting. Like this is how the meta of the game evolves. So there was a season where there was an idol hidden on like the bench. Like you notice people are sitting out on these challenges. So on the
Yeah,
bench where you sit out, there's an idol slash advantage hidden there. And similar to what you saw here, like there someone found a clue that said to go look there. So then on the subsequent seasons, since people know that happened, people started just checking just in case, even if they didn't come across a clue. And yeah, if you not only if like yeah, literally just if anybody just randomly reached in, they could have claimed the idol for sure. But I think if you're production, it's pretty at least at this point, it's unlikely that would happen just because like the bench is a more obvious place to check, but you're not gonna like check every part of a challenge like that would
right.
because
Yeah, no,
that's also like you would get caught because you'd be doing it every challenge, and eventually it's like, what are you doing? What?
and you just don't wanna be too distracted too, right? Like, if you're in the middle of a challenge, like, the ways that we saw Dan do it, he's smart about it. He took a second where they had a break in between to step away and just snag it in a way that didn't alert anyone else. So, kudos to Dan. He has a good eye. He's playing a smart game, but his threat level is becoming pretty obvious to those around him. And while he does have a group around him right now, the Brochachos, time will tell how long that relationship will continue to remain. It's something where we've seen time and time again these tribes. You test your relationship with key members, and at the end, there's only one person who can win. So, however strong a sort of relationship you want to build with a small group, eventually you're gonna have to find a way to break it all off. But Dan's playing a good game. He's got some protection with the idol, and I would like
Well,
to
with
think that
with
he's building good
both his
relationships.
idols, right?
Correct. I say one of them because the other one is public knowledge, so he at least has one that, I mean, it's in his pocket. He could use it whenever. Uh, like he's setting himself up pretty nicely. He's someone who, based on what we're seeing so far, I would be surprised if he gets eliminated in the short term. I think it would take a while to eliminate Dan.
Now, is it coincidence? This has all happened for him while not being on the same tribe as the love of his life, Kara. So my question to you, prediction time. Do the Brochachos have room for Dan's who he thinks is his future wife?
I would say no. They don't want any cooties to be part of the Brochachos. It's a boys' club
Boys Club. And
where
will
they
that
kiss each other, before bed every night.
and there was that one moment, I forget if it was this episode or last episode, but
Where
they
Kristen's feeding
all
Sean.
yeah, yes. They're all
And
getting real
John's like,
close.
I've never done this before. Kristen's like, oh, I haven't either. I'm like, what is this like sexual tension here? What is going
And then Gabby's heart sinks as she knows that
on?
Christian's
Good
heart
times.
is for another.
I honestly, Christian is having the time of his life, and I'm loving how he's playing the game, and I just love to see it. He's having a good time, and he's obviously making it known, and he's playing a strong game too. So like, kudos to Christian as well. It's just so far from what we've seen, it's a wholesome group of guys. So uh, always nice to see them.
Yeah, you asked me before we watched these episodes if I was feeling anyone was like a challenge beast, and I said, I mean, not really, like because like the big guys are Dan, Alec, and John, but none of them have really like dominated repeatedly, and the only person who's dominated repeatedly is Christian. And in
Uh-huh.
multiple, not just the puzzle, even the challenge from the
The
previous
challenge in that
episode.
episode, yeah.
Yep. Which was that challenge. It's so imagine you have like like a snake, a wooden snake, and you're trying to move the ball along the snake so it doesn't fall off the edges. But to move the ball, you're holding a like a platform with your two arms on cord. So like your arms are pulling rope and the rope is holding up that platform and the platform is pulling up the ball and you need to bob and weave so that it traces the stake vertically, and if you mess up it's just going to fall on the ground. And so that requires dexterity. You need, even if you know what to do, you need enough strength to actually like hold that platform in the right position. And their tribe has John doing it at first, and they're losing. And Christian subs himself in and dominates and makes
Yeah.
up all the grounds and
Very,
wins
very
basically.
cool challenge. Just to summarize it further, Nick actually has the early lead in that challenge along the snake. The point of it is to get the ball up to the very top of the snake, the body of the snake to the very top where it enters the hole wherever the snake's head is. And Nick is making good progress. Unlike Alec or initially John, he's not making any mistakes. He's just playing a slow game and having it slowly crawl up the snake. Alex starts to figure it out, after initially having to reset, and he starts to speed up and makes good progress where he eventually overtakes Nick. John, for his part, interestingly enough, he also has to reset, but then he also switches places with Christian. Christian coming from behind, not only overtaking Nick, but then like getting ahead of him and actually finishing the challenge before Nick can even get near the end. That was very impressive. Very impressive. So,
Yeah, so yeah, honestly, so your challenge beast so far is Christian,
yeah.
which is wild
No,
to
I
say.
can't even debate that.
Good. So
So,
yeah, good for Christian.
But yeah, going back to the episode, even this episode had an interesting challenge where it really tested the endurance of each tribe, right? And what was interesting was again kind of like a relay race. I think the important thing that I'll point to is towards the first part is like I believe it was like getting a ball up into like a net or something like that. But the big thing that you're doing towards the end to finish it is you as a group are collectively lifting this platform which holds like a lot of water. Like think of like a big bird water feeder, kind of like that. Each person is grabbing one end of it. You have four people holding it up together and it looks pretty heavy and they're
Yeah,
filling it with
but this is a
water in one end.
huge water feeder though. Like
Exactly. They're
like
filling in water.
6 foot diameter maybe.
That's right, yeah. No, filling it with water on one end and then having to go back to the other end once you have it filled with water, uh, in the middle of the way to the end point where you're having to, like, fill it in the station, you have this ramp that you have to get on and avoid spilling a lot of that water, so I was looking at this challenge where it's essentially you're balancing this giant bird feeder and feeding the water into this little hole that like gets you to that next section. And just thinking about how tough that was, because you're talking about balance, you're talking about good grip, you're talking about, again, the weather looks pretty hot to be able to maintain your composure, make sure everyone is balanced in a way that they're not toppling over or injuring themselves just grabbing a hold of this thing. Uh, that challenge seemed pretty hard to me. Honestly, one of the hardest challenges yet out of all the ones I've seen so far.
Yeah, it's another one that like it is making strength important, like physical strength. But again, there's also like the nuances of your communicating for that part where you're holding it filled with water up these balance beams. Imagine moving furniture with your friend and going upstairs with that furniture, and it's hard to like keep like if you are carrying a couch, but you need to keep the couch level while going up and down the stairs, that would be insanely hard. And the 4 people here had to attempt to do that.
And
It
again,
yeah.
we just see the Tiva tribe just dominate this challenge. Um, Vuku tribe also does very well. And Jabani is the tribe that we see struggles the most with it. Mike in particular is not able to get a good grasp every time they're going up on the ramp. They're losing a lot of the water, having to make more runs than the other two tribes. So that puts them in dead last. They finish the challenge with the team once again having to go back to tribal. So again, we're stuck in a situation where this team just faced elimination in the prior episode, and they're at least at a point where everyone seems to have, it's a 2-2 split right now in terms of the original tribes. But then at least in this tribe, it seems like the remaining members all get along with each other. So this ends up becoming a pretty difficult vote. And fortunately enough, there's no jacket involved this time around,
They do joke
but
about it though, because
they do.
Angelina was gonna like I think she just wanted to ask Larissa or something, and Larissa's like, "Is it my code?" She's like, "No, no, no."
She's saying something
Um,
about like, I'll give her like my sock, which has a hole in it or something like
well,
that.
yeah, yeah. Well. So let's talk about Angelina. So she was having a good time. She really wanted that jacket in the previous episode, but it turns out that she has created a very negative impression for herself. Like it was all fun and games during that episode, and we were happy to see Natalie go. Uh, but the remaining people, Mike, Larissa, and Nick, are like, they're not impressed at all. If she would do that, especially when Angelina reveals to them that she only voted for Larissa as part of her manipulation to try to get the jacket from Natalie, to get Natalie to give it to her. And they're saying if she would do that for a jacket, like what would she do for $1,000,000? She can't be trusted.
It's a good point.
So so Angelina has done damage to herself and still didn't get the jacket. That being said, she does not seem to be the target at first because her and Mike are feeling pretty confident. Mike, you even commented, Mike in the look confessional after they lose a challenge is talking about like, I'd hate to see one of them go. It's like that, but Mike, I mean, you're in danger too. Like what do you mean?
Well, it looks like based on how the tribal goes and even pre-tribal, his confidence is justified. It doesn't ever seem like he's in a position of danger.
It does, but
So
very
it's
confident.
not like I get it. I'm not one who likes to underestimate people, but it was just a funny catch that he wasn't even like putting his own name out there. He came up with the conclusion that like, yeah, it's going to be concerning if any one of the other three goes. Like, I'm not even an option myself. I know I'm going to be in it for the next episode.
Uh,
But
so yeah, but it turns out like this shapes up to be a dangerous 2-2 tie is what this is leading to, and I'm not sure exactly if anyone's in the wrong here of how it's handled, but what we see is Angelina and Mike talking to Larissa together, trying to ask like what she's thinking, which is always an awkward conversation because like no one's gonna say it's you. Like it's if the three of us are talking, the only other person's name is Nick in this case. So this is kind of a useless conversation anyway.
right.
But Larissa ultimately is like, I'm with Nick, which I mean goes against what I literally just said. So bad. I guess this is bad for Larissa. Don't say that because now you're saying it's I'm gonna vote for one of you two then. So then why would they ever vote with you? So that's not a good strategy. But I'm gonna stick with Nick, and which is basically threatening a tie. So, and then Angelina and Mike are like, well, she's not gonna work with us. Let's try to talk to Nick then. And we get a pretty fun scene. I don't know if you caught this, but we see Mike and Larissa talking in the water. And in the background of the shot, you can actually see Angelina and Nick. And then we cut to Angelina and Nick talking in the water too. And basically, and Nick is telling Angelina, yeah, like, I guess we gotta vote for Larissa. Nobody wants a tie. And then Mike is telling Larissa, like, we just can't trust Angelina. We gotta vote for her. Which is setting the stage for because Nick and Mike have their Rockstars Alliance, they're basically both lying to Larissa and Angelina, and together they're just gonna decide who to vote for.
Yeah, no, I caught that sequence. That was that was an interesting sequence because you don't see too many shots like that where you have the full view in terms of what's going on. But definitely an interesting decision to make, and one where I don't think there necessarily is a wrong answer here. I think you can make the case for any one of them being eliminated, but like, what this test is who has the strongest bond. And in this case, it's not even a tribal bond. It's the bond between Nick and Mike, the rock stars, whatever they want to call themselves. I don't think they're rock stars if, just between you and me, but they have
Don't
potential.
disrespect
That's all I'll
Nick's
say.
alliance names.
Yeah. I'm more of a fan of that Mason-Dixon line. But anyways, yeah, that's what it culminates to, that Nick and Mike get together afterwards and discuss, okay, like how do we want to go about this vote? And Mike essentially lays it out by saying, well, the safe option is getting Lyrsa out because that way I'm not continuing to eliminate members from my own original tribe. But the upside play potentially could be getting Angelina out because there might be more strategy involved with getting her out. That could be something where in the long run, it could be better for my game.
Do
Cut
you
to
agree with
tribal.
that? With Mike's assessment?
I do. Yeah, no, I think he nailed it. I do think that Lyrsa has from the start been looked down upon. She's been seen as a weaker candidate. So for most people, she is a safe pick in terms of she's not providing much. She's not someone you expect is going to be a threat. So in that sense, you could keep them, but it's, like you're not expecting much out of them. So might as well eliminate them when you have the opportunity. And for a week where you do have a split, and in Mike's case, he does want to maintain an image of, hey, I'm not going around eliminating all the Goliaths. That does push him to decide to choose Lyrissa. So I get that. I think safety does make sense here. I don't know if you necessarily need to overextend your hand, especially if at least Angelina is not uh, working against Mike here. I don't think he has any. He shouldn't be creating any issues here where they don't exist.
Understood.
Uh,
Understood.
but yeah. So going to tribal, as I mentioned, Mike's vote ends up being Lyrsa. Uh, Obviously, Angelina's vote ends up being Lyrsa. And interestingly enough, they are able to convince Nick to side with them and vote out Lyrsa. And ultimately, Lyrsa ends up being eliminated for episode 6.
Farewell, Lyrsa. Uh, I think this is probably one of the examples people cite about the well, I was gonna say this is an example of being swap screwed, which is things were great until you switched my tribe, and then I had no chance. But that being said, Lyrsa was already a target on her original tribe. She had to get saved, so there's no it's always possible she might have been a target again. I just find it interesting that I mean, I know you said that Mike and Angelina are able to persuade Nick, but what we're really shown is that Nick and Mike together make a decision for what's best for their two-person alliance. And I think it's obvious this is helpful for Mike. I don't know if it's as obvious if this is good for Nick.
Sure.
Like, obviously, you're voting
Yeah.
out someone from your own tribe. Now, he had no specific alliance with Larissa. Like, this isn't like he's voting out Christian or even Elizabeth, who he has the Thoroughbreds alliance with.
I think this might just be a case of they don't want to go to rocks, and he feels like Mike has a strong enough conviction to at least avoid trying to get Angelina out right now, so he's just not trying to force the issue.
Yeah, I wonder if this is it that he actually preferred to get Larissa out? Or maybe you're right. Maybe it's just like, I mean, either way is fine. This is the path of least resistance. It'd be great. I would prefer Angelina, but it doesn't hurt either way. It might just be that.
I will say I did love Lyrisa's ending comments here, where it seemed like, she came away not too bad, like she wasn't too distraught or anything. Which she made a funny comment talking about, oh, this is like with now me being eliminated, I'm gonna have to sit next to Natalie during the reunion and everything. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. It's
She
like
says,
punishment.
uh, of course it sucks to lose. But you want me to be honest? I'm really, really upset that I have to sit next to Miss Natalie at the reunion, and I have to
Ooh.
go with her right now to Ponderosa. So what she's saying is that, first of all, at the reunion, you're usually seated like the people who are voted out before the merge are sitting together, and the people that are in after the merge are sitting together. And sometimes you're even seated in like elimination order as well. So she's referencing that. So she is like a year from now, I'm gonna be upset because I have to sit next to her. And
Oh,
then
man.
she's saying, right now, I'm gonna go see her at Ponderosa. Ponderosa, if you don't remember, is like the place you go when you're eliminated. That's what it's
Yeah.
referred to as.
Oh, boy. Natalie
It's just
just, catching strays even when she's eliminated.
yeah, it's so like literally it's it sucks I lost my chance to win $1,000,000. But you know what sucks more? Having to be in the same room as Natalie. Which I'm
It
gonna have to do in like 20
I
minutes.
mean, she's gotta be number 1 in terms of the people that I've seen so far amongst all the seasons I've watched in terms of most unlikable person.
And it's like, I don't know, and she doesn't come across as a villain the way that Rome did, or even
Yeah,
Say at times. But she's
and that's
definitely like the most hated.
yeah, that's why it's hard to just come out and say that because it's like, I kinda get her to some point, like, I don't yeah, like, she's not acting villainous, she's just being so authentically herself in a way that it's like, you gotta adapt to the game, and there's just a lack of self-awareness that is just so evident. But
'Cause
anyways,
yeah.
good episode, and, nice to see, Tiva continue to dominate, go Tiva, go
Yeah, they're doing good.
Brochachos.
The Brochachos doing well, and I know we gave Gabby some flack earlier, but in challenges, Gabby's also doing great. No issues there.
Yeah.
before we end, we do have to, of course, address your winner picks. So as we discussed while you were not here last week, you had two of the worst winner picks I've ever seen. Moments after
What?
picking them,
Did I?
instantly
I don't
voted
recall.
out. Well, yeah, we have it on paper records, not electronic records. But
How convenient that you
as
didn't
as
catch me stating that. Not. But
so
continue.
you lost Jeremy and lost me. So we discussed this before these two episodes. You had to replace them. You can announce your replacement winner picks, if you will.
Yeah, fake news, guys. I never posted it. No, I'm joking. Yeah, no, it was just what a disaster set of picks that immediately the two that I selected immediately got eliminated. It's
Not
kind of
even
funny in a
two full
sense.
episodes passed, and gosh,
I I know, and I was saying I had Natalie as a joke pick, so like coincidentally, if there were 3 picks within the next 3 episodes, I would have had all 3 eliminated. But yeah, to answer your question, I think before we were getting into this episode, I had mentioned that originally I was stuck between Kara and John, and I just realized I've been calling her Kara and John, and I ultimately decided to go for John, just because I recognize him, so it's kind of it's fun to see a person that you recognize make it all the way. He's just kind of a feel good pick for me, less so that I expect him to win, but more of a feel good pick. The other pick being Davy from, David. So I think those 2 would be my current picks.
not bad at all. And as a reminder, Angie's picks are still in the game. Uh, and she has Christian from the David's tribe and
Mhm. Strong
Angelina
pick.
from the Goliath tribe. Angelina, it's she's kind of hard to judge. She's kind of been the center of attention lately, and I mean and she's been pretty funny. Um, but she's made things happen. What she wants to happen has been happening. And I'm very curious. We saw in the scenes of the next episode that the next thing we're gonna watch is the merge.
Mhm.
So I mean, this goes for everybody. I'm very curious how all these people are gonna interact when they're all in the same place because they've had time to do things on their little tribes, but now they're going back to a big tribe. So
For sure.
so yeah, we'll see.
Angelina is definitely skirting with danger though, I think, so we'll see how she's able to throw in a little bit more subtlety there, because I think at least within these last couple of episodes, she has put the people around her on watch. Um, she's not she's played a good game, but she hasn't been playing a good enough game maybe for the long term just yet, in my opinion.
But yeah, so that's our 2 episodes for this week. Thank you, F, for returning to the island for these fun
Yeah,
episodes.
always nice to chat with you guys. Or just you, but Ange when she's back too.
And our loving audience too. So thank all of you for tuning in and listening, and come back next week as we continue into the merge for episodes 7 and 8 of David versus Goliath. So until then, everyone, and until we speak again, ciao.